I'm Jason McLean, 33, from Mobile, Alabama. I've hunted every stretch of woods from Talladega to DeSoto. I'm not into ghost stories or Bigfoot stuff. I believe in what I see, and what I saw out near Leaf River last fall changed how I look at the woods forever. My girlfriend, Alyssa, and I were on a weekend trip in late September 2023 when something circled our motorhome in the middle of the night. I've gone back over every second of it in my head, and the only word I can put to what we saw is dogman. I know how it sounds, but if you'd been there with us, you'd be using the same word too. It all started with Alyssa waking me up in the middle of the night. It was close to 2 in the morning. We were camped off a gravel spur road east of Leaf River Wildlife Management Area. No hookups, no signal, just a flat clearing tucked into the pine forest. We'd been scouting all day, looking for signs of hogs, and I was dead tired. I was dead asleep when she grabbed my arm, whispering my name in a voice I didn't recognize. "Jason, wake up. Something's outside." I could tell by the way she moved that something had spooked her badly. She kept glancing at the wall beside the bed, the one with the window. "I heard footsteps," she whispered. "Outside. Heavy ones." I was still shaking off sleep when she slipped out from under the blanket and crept toward the window, careful not to make a sound as she pulled back the curtain. I could barely keep my eyes open, half convinced it was nothing more than a curious raccoon or maybe a deer sniffing near the trailer. We'd seen plenty of wildlife while scouting earlier that day, and I figured the sounds she was hearing were just the usual forest background noise. At worst, I thought it might be some creep wandering too close to our spot, the kind of idiot I could scare off in 10 seconds flat with a flashlight and some choice words. I never imagined she was about to come face to face with something that didn't fit into either of those categories. The moment she reached the window and peeked behind the curtain, she screamed, a sound so raw and primal that it hit me like a jolt of electricity. It wasn't a startled yelp or the kind of scream you let out when you're spooked by a shadow. It came from deep in her chest, the kind of noise you make when something reaches inside your head and flips the panic switch all the way up. I was up in an instant, heart hammering, and she was already stumbling backward from the window, one hand clamped over her mouth, the other pointing. Her eyes were locked open, wild with something beyond fear. I didn't even need to ask what she'd seen. I knew by her face that it wasn't a deer or a raccoon. That moment split the night clean in half. Everything before it was just a quiet camping trip. Everything after was pure terror. "It was right there," she said, her voice trembling. "Looking in." It was looking right at me. Its face was just inches from the glass. I stood frozen for a second, still trying to understand what she meant. "What was? What did you see?" She shook her head slowly, like she didn't even believe the words coming out of her mouth. "I don't know exactly. It looked like a dog at first. Number. A wolf. Standing up. Huge. But not like a normal animal. Its face was wrong. It had this long muzzle, but the jaw was thick, almost blocky, like a person's. The fur was coarse and patchy, and it clung to its head as if it were wet. Its lips were pulled back, but not in a snarl, more like it was breathing heavy, showing these thick, jagged teeth. And the nose, it was black and torn, like scar tissue, like it had been injured or healed over weird. She took a breath, steadying herself. "I swear, it looked like a monster from a movie." She looked at me dead in the eyes. "I think it was a werewolf, Jason. I really do. I don't care how crazy that sounds. That's what it looked like." I didn't wait to hear more. My first thought, stupid as it sounds now, was that it had to be some jackass in a costume trying to scare us. Maybe a meth head. Maybe some bored locals playing a sick prank, getting a kick out of sneaking up on campers out in the woods. The idea that someone would walk around dressed like a damn werewolf to freak people out in the middle of nowhere pissed me off more than it scared me. I was going to scare him back. Maybe teach him a lesson he wouldn't forget. I grabbed the Glock 19 from the holster under the driver's seat and threw on my boots. Shorts, t-shirt, gun. That was all I had time for. Alyssa begged me not to go out. "Jason, please, don't open the door." I put a hand on her shoulder and tried to calm her down. It's just some creep, I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. Probably some loser trying to mess with us, maybe looking for a reaction. He picked the wrong camper. I'll deal with him. She grabbed my arm, eyes pleading. Jason, I'm serious. That thing wasn't right. It wasn't human. I eased the door open. Glock raised. Everything was still. No bugs, no wind. Just the kind of thick silence you get in deep woods, where sound feels like it's been absorbed by the trees. I stepped down into the gravel, pistol low and ready. The clearing was about 120 feet wide, rimmed by palmettos and young pines. Moonlight leaked in through the canopy, enough to see shapes but not enough to discern any real details. I moved slowly, scanning left and right with my flashlight. I didn't see anyone. No movement, no animals, nothing human. Until I circled the rear of the RV. That's when I saw the prints. They stopped me cold. 5 of them, clear as day in the gravel. Each one spaced out in a steady stride like someone had walked calmly behind our camper. Except these weren't human. Not even close. They had 5 toes, yes, but the shape was all wrong. Wide at the front, with toes that ended in long, sharp divots. Claw marks. Not like a dog or a bear either. Bears waddle. These prints moved straight and narrow. Bipedal. The heel impressions were deep, as if whatever made them weighed hundreds of pounds. The claw marks sank clean into the gravel, like chisels. My first thought snapped. That wasn't a costume. That wasn't a prank. Nobody could fake prints like these, not in that kind of stride, not with that kind of weight. My stomach dropped. Alyssa had been right. This wasn't someone screwing with us. This was something else entirely. I crouched and ran my light along the ground, following the trail of those deep, clawed impressions. The gait was long. The stride was heavy. Whatever made these had to be moving with confidence, like it wasn't afraid of being seen. It walked right up to the slide-out, probably within 10 feet of where Alyssa had been lying in bed. That thought twisted in my gut. I scanned the gravel slowly, then swept the beam wider, pushing the edge of the clearing. My stomach tightened into a hard knot. Something was there. Not moving, not hiding, just standing there. Right at the edge of the tree line, just out of reach of the light. At first, I thought it was part of the tree, a trick of the moonlight. But then it shifted slightly, the silhouette separating itself from the trunk with this eerie, unnatural grace. It was definitely alive. Tall, at least 7 feet, maybe more, and hunched forward like it carried weight in its shoulders. It had a thick, muscular upper body, wide across the chest, but tapered down at the waist like an athlete. Its arms hung impossibly low, nearly to its knees, and they ended in thick hands that looked too big, too heavy for its long limbs. The shape swayed, slow and subtle, as if it were breathing in long, steady rhythms, or rocking gently on the balls of its feet. Not in a nervous way, more like a creature completely at ease, watching from the shadows, like it was trying to decide what to do with me. I froze for a moment. The flashlight trembled slightly in my grip as I adjusted the beam, trying to see more, but it stayed just far enough back, like it knew the exact line where I couldn't reach. It was testing how close it could get without giving itself away. I raised the gun, hands sweating now despite the cool air. "Back off!" I shouted into the dark, my voice sharper than I intended. Whatever it was, didn't move, didn't flinch, just kept swaying, like it was mocking me, like it knew the distance was just enough to be safe. I felt this hot mix of fear and anger surge through me. I wasn't going to let this thing stand there and stare us down like we were prey, so I fired. Once. The gunshot cracked through the forest like a firecracker. Still no movement, so I fired again, harder this time, like the extra pressure in my trigger finger might make the bullet hit harder. The muzzle flash lit up the trees for a blink. By the time my eyes adjusted to the darkness again, the figure was gone, like it had never been there at all. I stood there for a moment, waiting, every nerve stretched taut. I expected something, a shuffle, a snap of a twig, anything, but nothing came. Just that same oppressive silence like the woods were holding their breath. Then, from my left, not where the figure had vanished, but closer and deep in the underbrush, I heard something, a low, drawn-out growl, not loud, but deep and wet, like it came from something with a chest the size of a barrel. My heart kicked into overdrive. I spun toward the sound and raised the gun, flashlight sweeping across ferns and brush. I couldn't see it, but I could feel it, the presence, watching me. I fired again into the dark. The growling stopped. A second later, I heard something heavy moving through the brush, not running, just pushing through. That broke me. Not just in the way fear breaks your sense of calm, but in a deeper, more instinctive way. Something ancient inside me uncoiled. That growl, it wasn't just sound. It felt like it vibrated my bones. I suddenly wasn't a man with a gun anymore. I was prey. That presence in the brush wasn't some hiker, some prankster, or even a predator in the normal sense. It was something older, darker. I felt this cold wave roll through my chest, followed by the kind of panic you can't think your way out of. My legs started moving before my brain had caught up. I lost control, turned and ran, gun clenched tight in my hand. Didn't look back. Barreled up the steps and slammed the door shut behind me, locking it immediately. I didn't say anything to Alyssa. I just sat down beside her, breath shallow, ears straining for another sound. My hand stayed on the Glock for the rest of the night. Alyssa hadn't moved from the bed. She was curled up with her knees to her chest, eyes red from crying. I sat down next to her, the Glock still clutched in my hand, the sweat on my palms starting to cool against the polymer grip. My chest was still rising rapidly, my lungs pulling in shallow breaths as I tried to calm myself down. But the truth was, I was rattled to my core. I didn't say a word. What could I possibly say that wouldn't make it worse? Alyssa was already curled up, her eyes rimmed red and her breathing shaky. I wanted to tell her it was over, that we were safe now, but I didn't believe that myself. All I could do was sit beside her and listen, heart pounding, gun across my lap, waiting for the next sound from outside. Neither of us slept. We just listened, for hours. Every creak of the frame, every breeze against the siding made us flinch, but it didn't come back. Morning came slowly and pale. We stepped out together once the sun cleared the tree line. The prints were still there. Worse, there were marks on the fiberglass, just behind the bedroom window. 3 faint lines in the dust and condensation. Parallel, vertical, about 7 feet off the ground, like something had leaned in and rested a hand there. We left within the hour. Didn't even make coffee. Packed everything in silence and drove straight out to the main road. I don't know what we saw. After that night, I started digging, reading everything I could about so-called cryptids, regional legends, missing hunters, mutilated game, and sightings in the Deep South. That's when I kept coming across 2 words, werewolf and dogman. Some say they're the same thing. Others swear dogmen are a separate breed, taller, leaner, more intelligent, and less supernatural. Whatever the difference, both sounded a hell of a lot like what Alyssa and I encountered. I used to roll my eyes at that kind of stuff. I'm a practical man, but after standing in the dark and hearing that thing breathe less than 30 feet away, I'll never laugh at those stories again. Whatever was out there that night wasn't a prankster, and it damn sure wasn't a bear. It moved with intent. It watched us as if it were sizing us up. Thank God I had my gun with me on that trip, or I might not be here to tell the story. My name's Jamie Harlan. I'm a ranger at Leaf River Wildlife Management Area, down in southern Mississippi. Most days my work is routine, monitoring habitat zones, handling poaching complaints, and checking permits. It's quiet, solitary work, and that's how I like it. But the woods out here are old, and not everything that lives in them shows up in our manuals. I've seen things in those woods that never made it into any report. Most people think that we know about every creature that prowls the woods here in America, but sometimes you stumble on something that doesn't fit into the natural order. That's what happened to me out on Forest Road 17. It started with a missing hunter, a man named Clay Donnell, 46 years old, local to Jones County. His truck had been parked at a pull-off for 2 days when a passerby reported it. Dispatch sent me to check it out, and Jake, one of the sheriff's deputies, tagged along. He was young, talkative, and new to the area. I figured the company wouldn't hurt. We rolled down that gravel stretch late in the afternoon. The air was heavy with the scent of pine and swamp water. A line of dark clouds was starting to bruise the horizon, the kind of evening that promised thunder. When we reached Clay's truck, I knew right away something wasn't right. The driver's door was open, keys still dangling in the ignition, blood on the door handle. About 100 yards off the road, tucked in a low clearing, we found his campsite. The place looked like it had been hit by a tornado. The tent was shredded to ribbons, the cooler tipped over, its contents scattered and half buried in the mud. A skinning rack stood at the edge of the clearing, empty, but the dirt beneath it was dark with dried blood. Drag marks led away from it, like something had been hauled into the trees. Only, there weren't any boot prints, but there were impressions. Deep, oblong shapes pressed into the mud with a stride too wide for a man, each one filling with rainwater that shimmered faintly in the fading light. The edges were crisp, too clean to be old. Jake crouched beside one of them and whistled low. "Big bear, maybe? Walking funny?" he said, glancing at me with a shaky grin that didn't reach his eyes. I didn't answer. I'd seen bears walk upright before, but nothing that left prints like these. The claws dug deep, almost symmetrical, as if each toe had struck the ground like a spike. The soil around them was kicked backward in narrow sprays, showing the kind of weight and leverage you'd expect from something running upright. I scanned the pattern again. 6 prints, each a solid foot long, then looked toward the trees. Whatever made those tracks wasn't on all fours. It walked like a man, but taller and heavier, much heavier. As the light started to fade, the forest quieted down. The frogs, the cicadas, even the wind, all gone. Just that heavy silence that settles in just before a storm. Jake wanted to head back, wait for backup. I couldn't, not with a man missing. I told him we'd follow the drag marks just a little ways, see if we could find a sign of him. Jake grumbled but nodded. We followed the trail for about 300 yards before the smell hit us. Iron and rot, sharp in the throat. The drag marks led to a massive cypress, half-hollowed at the base. Jammed inside was a deer carcass, head first, ribs cracked wide open like someone had tried to pull it apart. The flesh was stripped in rough patches, not clean like a knife cut, torn, mangled. Flies swarmed so thick it sounded like static. Jake gagged and stepped back, one hand pressed to his mouth. Jesus Christ, who'd do that? His voice trembled more than he probably realized. "No one," I said quietly. "No one human." I pulled out my phone and snapped a photo for the record, though my hands were slick with sweat and I could barely hold the camera steady. Jake's eyes darted around, scanning the forest. "We shouldn't be here," he whispered. "Let's go. We'll come back in the morning with backup. Maybe bring a canine unit. Whatever did this..." He stopped himself, shaking his head. "It's not out here now, right?" I didn't answer right away. The woods were still. No frogs, no insects, just the slow drip of water from the canopy. Jake was clearly spooked. First, the weird footprints, and now the torn-up deer. Even I felt it, the creeping sense that we were being watched, that the woods themselves were holding their breath, waiting for something to move. I didn't argue this time. We turned back the way we came. The light was fading quickly, and I knew we wouldn't find the missing hunter that night. We were about 40 yards from the truck when Jake suddenly stopped dead. "Jamie," he said, voice thin. "What the hell is that?" Something big was standing by the truck, sniffing around the driver's door. For a second, I thought it really was a bear. Broad shoulders, hunched frame, but then it straightened up. It stood easily 7, maybe 8 feet tall. My mind fought to make sense of what I was seeing. First bear, then maybe some kind of costume, anything that made sense, but none of it fit. Its chest was bare in patches, covered in thick brown-gray fur that glistened in the half-light, muscles shifting beneath like ropes under wet leather. The arms hung long and lean, with hands ending in massive claws. My mouth went dry. Every instinct screamed at me to move, to draw my weapon, to run, but I just stood there, frozen. My pulse thundered in my ears, drowning out everything else. But it was the head that finally broke my denial. Elongated, angular, with a snout and ears like a wolf, yet disturbingly human in how it turned, how it looked back at us. For a moment, my thoughts splintered. My brain tried to assign a label to the thing: wolf, man, bear, hallucination. But every explanation fell apart as soon as it formed. A cold shiver crawled from my neck down to my fingertips. My knees felt loose, like they might give out. The creature's eyes seemed to pin me in place, reading something behind my face, something primal and small. Fear didn't come as a jolt. It seeped in, slow and suffocating, until I could taste it in my mouth like copper. My stomach turned to ice. That's when I realized I wasn't breathing at all. All of a sudden, Jake raised his Glock and shouted, "Sheriff's office! Don't move!" His voice cracked halfway through, echoing thinly through the damp trees. The creature's head tilted again, studying us like it understood the command, and that somehow made it worse. Every nerve in my body screamed to run, yet I couldn't move. My heart hammered against my ribs as Jake's flashlight beam slid across its chest, catching the wet fur, the breath rising in slow, visible plumes. It was sizing us up, deciding something. Then it took a step forward. I opened my mouth to say something, but the gun went off first. One sharp crack that seemed to split the night in two. The bang startled the creature for an instant, and in that frozen frame I saw its face contort, not in pain, but in something like surprise. Then it was gone, just gone. 1 second, it was there, massive and solid. The next, it dissolved into the trees as though the forest had swallowed it whole. My brain lagged behind my body, refusing to accept that something that size could move that fast. The echo of the gunshot rolled over us, fading into the distance, and then came the chaos. Branches breaking, leaves thrashing, the sound of something circling so fast it seemed everywhere at once. My chest tightened with raw panic. It felt like the woods themselves had come alive, surrounding us, hunting us. Jake spun in every direction, flashlight jerking wildly. "Where is it?" The beam cut through the mist and rain, glancing off slick bark and empty air. I could hear it moving, fast, deliberate, always just out of sight. The footsteps pounded in staggered bursts, heavy and wet, circling us. Then came the growling, low, deep, and layered, like two sounds folded together. It vibrated through the air, through my chest, into the pit of my stomach. The sound was so close I could feel it, a trembling hum that made my teeth ache. My instincts screamed that it was right behind us, though every shadow looked alive. Jake's flashlight quivered in his hand. He swung it toward the brush, but the growls stopped, then erupted again a few seconds later from a different direction. My nerves snapped taut. I grabbed his arm hard enough to make him flinch. "Back to the truck," I hissed. "Now!" We moved slowly, me with the rifle, Jake with his Glock, covering each other, both flashlights sweeping the brush. Every few seconds, a noise would break through the rain, the dragging scrape of claws against bark, a sharp snap of a branch, the soft crunch of wet leaves settling after something heavy had just passed through. Each sound ricocheted off the trees, impossible to pin down. Every time I spun, flashlight beams slashing across the woods. All I saw was the wet gleam of moss and the restless shiver of trembling branches. Nothing moved, nothing showed itself, but the presence was there, hanging in the black gaps between tree trunks, just out of sight. We kept our feet moving, not daring to turn our backs to the forest, retreating step by step toward the truck. Each time my boots squelched into the soft, waterlogged loam, I carefully planted them, afraid that if I stumbled, I'd make the sort of sound that would trigger an attack. Jake's shoes weren't so lucky. His foot caught a submerged root, and he slipped, the gun wavering upward for a split second before he caught himself. The noise seemed to echo forever, and for a moment, we both froze, waiting for the rush of movement from the woods. None came. Only the steady patter of rain and the distant rumble of thunder. Then, from directly behind us, a branch snapped. Not the casual pop of a breeze through deadwood, but a sharp, deliberate break, like someone or something was letting us know exactly how close they were. I jerked around, finger tightening on the trigger, flashlight sweeping the brush. My eyes caught motion, just a fleeting ripple in the shadows. But of course, by the time I turned my head, it was already gone. We kept moving, faster now, both of us breathing hard, adrenaline shredding any sense of time or distance. The canopy above thickened, blotting out what little daylight remained. The world shrank to the narrow glow of our flashlights and the monstrous darkness beyond. The sense of being herded toward the truck was unmistakable. Whatever was out there, it was steering us, pushing us back, not chasing. The thought twisted my gut. If it wanted us dead, why hadn't it just finished it already? Was it toying with us, or was it afraid to approach the vehicle? Either way, the tension built with every step, anticipation so thick it felt like swimming through it. By the time my hand collided with the cold metal of the truck bed, my whole body jolted. The shock of solid contact, after so many endless minutes of uncertainty and fear, nearly made me drop my rifle. For a brief second, I thought we'd made it. We pressed our backs up against the truck, eyes never leaving the tree line, both of us sucking in air and trying to keep our hands from shaking. Jake looked at me with wide, bloodshot eyes, his mouth moving, but no sound coming out. We both knew instinctively that we were in grave danger. Jake's breathing was ragged. "Get in! Get in!" He yanked the door open, half falling inside. I followed, slammed mine shut, and locked it. For a few seconds, nothing moved, just rain starting to patter on the windshield. Then the shape appeared in the rearview mirror. It was standing in the middle of the road, perfectly still. Soaked fur plastered against its chest, long arms hanging at its sides. Its head turned slightly as if studying us. The reflection of its eyes caught the light just enough to shimmer, like wet stone, not glowing, just cold. I started the engine. Like with the gunshot earlier, the noise made it flinch just a little. I floored it. Gravel spat out behind us as we tore down that road. Jake kept twisting in his seat, watching through the rear window. "It's still there," he shouted. I looked once, long enough to see it shrinking in the distance, standing in the center of the road as the rain came down. We didn't stop until we hit the ranger station 20 miles away. We came back the next morning with a full team, 4 deputies, 6 wildlife officers, and 2 search dogs. Rain had washed through overnight. The campsite looked different, muted, as if the woods had tried to heal themselves. The drag marks and footprints were barely visible anymore. The hollow cypress stood empty now, but the inside of the trunk still stank like an abattoir. The trunk had been marked. 9 feet up, there were deep vertical slashes, 4 of them. The dogs wouldn't go near that cypress tree. They'd whine and pull their handlers away, tails tucked, like they could smell something we couldn't. Jake didn't say a word. Neither did I. We searched for 2 days, found Clay's rifle half buried in muck, about 500 yards from the campsite, but no trace of him. The report we filed said what reports always say: missing, presumed deceased. Animal attack suspected. Case closed. I've spent over a year patrolling these woods since that night, and not a day goes by without the memory resurfacing when I hear the wind push through the cypress or see fresh tracks in the mud. I try to tell myself it was a trick of light, an illusion shaped by fear and exhaustion, but then I remember the weight in its stare, the sense that it knew more about us than we knew about it. Sometimes on fog-heavy mornings I'll catch the faint scent of wet fur or see something shift deep in the tree line, too far away to name. When that happens, I don't linger. I keep driving, windows up, eyes straight ahead, because whatever's out there, it doesn't belong in any report. It belongs to the dark, and for reasons I'll never understand, the dark chose to let me walk away.